Buenas tardes, good afternoon. Welcome to the Intelligent Community Movement event, Building Much Better Places to Live It. My name is Juan Francisco Jimenez. I am the director of the Master's Degree in Digital Communication and New Technology here in the university. This is an event that wants to promote communities like a factor of transformation about societies, about social issues, economic and cultural in smart cities, in cities, okay? So the event is organized by the Intelligence Community Forum, the Master's Degree in Digital Communication and New Technologies, and Argelic Networks. We are very glad to say hello here in the university. We as a university we work because knowledge society, because smart cities are impossible without smart citizens. So we are very, very glad to say to you hello. Now I would like to invite you to see a video. It's Luz Zacalila, co-founder of Intelligent Community Forum, that is going to welcome us. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Luz Zaccarella, and I'm one of the co-founders of the Intelligent Community Forum. I'd like to welcome you to this outstanding event and the work that we will do here today to define the intelligent community movement, building much better places to live in. I know some of you are joining us there in Barcelona, while many others are watching online from around the world. So my greetings to everyone. The Intelligent Community Forum is designed to really make any place that person calls home a wonderful place to live. It is a lot easier to say than to do, but 200 communities from around the world are working on this project every day, along with people like you who understand what digital technologies are capable of when put in service of the human being. And that is our work today. I'd like to thank you for allowing us to be here and for making today's events possible. Very specifically, I'd like to thank Dr. Rafael Rodriguez Ponga, the rector at Abad Oliba University. I'd like to thank Dr. Enrique Martinez, the Dean of Faculty of Humanities at the university, Dr. Juan Francisco Jimenez, the Director of Masters in Digital Telecommunications and New Technologies at the university, and finally, Dr. Manuel Dominguez, the Professor of Master in Digital Communications and New Technologies at the university. I'd also like to thank Peter Porten from the Eindhoven International Project Office and Alexander Schmidt of Babel for making the time to join us today. Peter Porten, coming from the city of Eindhoven, Holland, which was our 2011 Intelligent Community of the Year, probably knows more about how to develop an ecosystem to create an intelligent community than any other single person on earth. So you have a great asset there with you today. And I'd also like to welcome our friend, Augustine Argelek, for coordinating this event. With that, I wish for you to have a great event and hope to meet some of you next year here in New York, where I am, at our summit on 25-26 October. I also want to take the time to congratulate New Taipei City. They were recently named the Intelligent Community of the Year. And you may be speaking about them today in the way that they've used digital technology to create a better citizen and a better citizen experience in one of the great cities on earth that many of you have never been to and never heard of, but which is a great example of some of the things you're going to be talking about today. So if you need to reach me, please feel free to do that. My email address is on our website. You can visit the Intelligent Community and learn more about us at intelligentcommunity.org. And as we always say here at the Intelligent Community Forum, let's all remember that there really is no place like home. Good luck, and thank you.
Thank you, Lou. So we have now three very interesting speakers that are going to share with us their experiences, their approaches about this amazing topic. Let's move into our first speaker. He's Agustín Argelic. He's the director of Argelic Networks, a telecommunication and information technology consultancy. He's a member of the Society of Communication Technology Consultants International, and he is a member of the think tank Intelligent Community Forum and a member of the international jury for the Intelligent Community of the Year Award. Agustín, please.
Thank you very much. Well, I am going to change to speak in Spanish, so those who are following us and watching us from internet and from YouTube, you can check the automatic translation system, so you can understand me. All my slides are in English, and I think you will understand. It doesn't matter if you are English native or Spanish native. So you have here first, and I am encouraging all of you, animar a todos a que obviamente compartáis las impresiones de este evento y de esta presentación en internet, tanto impresiones positivas como impresiones negativas. Aquí tenéis las cuentas de todos los conferenciantes y el hashtag que hemos preparado, que es el hashtag del máster. Me he olvidado de poner en marcha el mando a distancia. Bueno. Venga, perfecto. Bueno, yo voy a contaros cuáles son los principios básicos del movimiento Intelligent Community Forum. ¿Vale? A ver si me aclaro con el mando. Vale, menos mal. Bueno, vamos a ver. Habéis visto que esta semana en Barcelona se ha celebrado el Congreso de Smart Cities, ¿vale? Pero yo no voy a hablar de Smart Cities. Smart Cities hace proyectos muy interesantes en los cuales usa tecnología para hacer que las ciudades funcionen mejor, que el tráfico sea mejor, que haya menos polución, que controlemos los consumos eléctricos, que esté más limpio, etc. Pero Intelligent Community Forum tiene un concepto muchísimo más amplio, porque, hombre, es importante usar la tecnología, pero la tecnología no es un fin, simplemente es una de las herramientas que tenemos a nuestra disposición. ¿Para qué? Para lo que realmente nos interesa. ¿Y qué es lo que realmente nos interesa? Hombre, construir una sociedad, una comunidad en la cual todos podamos prosperar materialmente y humanamente. Entonces, ¿esto cómo lo vamos a hacer? Bueno, el movimiento Intelligent Community Forum se identifica o se llama a sí mismo como un think tank, un centro de pensamiento. Tiene una serie de institutos en diferentes países que desarrollan estas ideas y a la vez es una red de ciudades, que son las ciudades que han participado y que se han presentado a los diferentes premios y que han sido reconocidas como ciudades que usan la metodología de Intelligent Community Forum, ¿no? O sea, somos una red de ciudades más un conjunto de pensadores, consultores, asesores, etc. ¿Vale? ¿Qué hacemos? ¿Qué servicios hacemos? Bueno, organizamos unos premios internacionales cada año que nombramos a la ciudad, a la comunidad, puede ser una ciudad, puede ser una comarca, puede ser incluso un país más inteligente, acorde con los indicadores que yo ahora os voy a explicar a continuación. Hacemos servicios de consultoría, de mentorizaje. Bueno, después Peter os explicará todos los trabajos que él está haciendo en Asia. Hacemos análisis de las diferentes comunidades, comparando estos 6 parámetros y viendo cómo están en evolución las diferentes comunidades respecto a estos 6 parámetros, ¿vale? Publicamos libros y hacemos conferencias, etc. Bueno, ¿y esto dónde lo hacemos? Hombre, lo hacemos en un momento en que si algo podemos decir que hay, pues es un mundo impredecible, que están pasando muchas cosas. Hay profundos cambios demográficos, muy profundos, no solo en Europa, por ejemplo en China, se empiezan a ver las consecuencias de la política del hijo único. Tenemos el COVID y enfermedades y un montón de cosas que no nos creíamos, que pensábamos que eran cosas del pasado, lo de las pandemias. Tenemos mucha nueva tecnología, mucha, y muchas de las cuales ni siquiera las sabemos o la gente se piensa que no existe, y ahí he puesto algunas. Por ejemplo, la captura de carbono, o las centrales nucleares de nueva generación, o el tratamiento de aguas. Y después, bueno, tenemos problemas, por desgracia, problemas geoestratégicos, tenemos guerras, tenemos tensiones políticas por un montón de sitios, ¿vale? Bueno, entonces, ¿qué podemos hacer? ¿Qué puede hacer una ciudad? ¿Qué puede hacer una comunidad? ¿Qué puede hacer una región? Pues puede hacer dos cosas. Dejarse llevar o asumir la realidad como es, asumirla e intentar tomar, digamos, proactivamente y no dejarse llevar, ¿no? O sea, tú te puedes o dejar llevar, ¿cómo vas? Voy tirando, ¿no? O asumir la situación e intentar domar este caballo a veces salvaje en el que vamos todos montados, ¿vale? Y este es el enfoque, ¿vale? Muy bien, ¿cómo lo vamos a hacer? Bueno, yo voy a explicar la metodología, pero también voy a poner un paréntesis, porque claro, todos los consultores o los de estos siempre queremos decir un poquito la nuestra, ¿no? Entonces, yo me inspiro en la metodología y voy a hacer mi propia explicación de esta metodología. Después os pondré al final, digamos, la versión oficial de la metodología, ¿no? Y yo digo que está basado, he dicho en 6, yo digo en 5 más 1 indicadores. ¿Cuál sería el primer indicador? ¿Qué es lo que necesitamos nosotros como sociedad, como ciudad, para poder sobrevivir, para vivir? Hombre, lo primero que necesitamos son infraestructuras. ¿Y cuáles son las más importantes? Pues mira, la que están en la base, la que ves en la base de la pirámide, para mí es la más importante, que es la energía. Necesitamos energía, necesitamos agua, necesitamos carreteras y trenes, necesitamos aeropuertos, puertos, necesitamos redes de telecomunicaciones. El think tank está muy focalizado en redes de comunicaciones porque en muchos sitios no hay. No es nuestro caso. En el otro lado de la columna, pues yo he puesto 4 cosas que es lo que creo que fallan más en nuestra situación aquí en España o en Cataluña, ¿no? La energía somos dependientes. El agua, tenemos un clima mediterráneo y sequías terribles, ¿no? Los trenes, bueno, tenemos una falta de conectividad por los problemas del ancho europeo y el famoso corredor del Mediterráneo, que pasan los años y no se termina de construir. El aeropuerto lo tenemos a punto de colapsar. Bueno, de telecomunicaciones yo os digo que es, como veis aquí, es de lo mejor, vamos. O sea, España es el tercer país del mundo en fibra óptica, de Europa en fibra óptica desplegada, y está entre los 5 primeros del mundo. Lo hemos hecho muy bien, no voy a explicar por qué, pero lo estamos haciendo muy bien. Sí que tenemos, y aquí veis, en este mapa veis que van a empezar a llegar un montón de cables submarinos a la península ibérica, y aquí sí que vamos a necesitar muchísimas más centros de datos para procesar toda esta información de la economía digital. Pero bueno, yo lo que quiero, como os decía, yo lo que quiero de verdad es hoy puntualizar una idea. Voy a intentar lanzar muchas ideas, pero con que os quedéis con alguna me voy a quedar muy contento. Y esta es la primera. Oye, ¿qué le pasa a Europa? Pues que Europa es un enfermo que está permanentemente conectado a una transfusión de sangre que se llama energía. Y eso es un señor problema. ¿Y qué sangre nos están dando? Pues nos están dando gas, nos están dando petróleo, nos están dando uranio. El uranio que corre en nuestras centrales nucleares también lo estamos comprando. Viene de Kazajstán y viene de Rusia. ¿Es esto una buena idea? Yo voy a intentar meter un poco el dedo en la llaga. ¿Es esto una buena idea? Porque parece que con todo el debate que hay no sabemos nada de energía. Yo solo quiero deciros 3 ideas claras. No sabemos almacenar energía, lo que almacenamos en una batería es poquísimo. La energía que nos demanda la red es la que tenemos que entregar en cada momento. Y segundo, la energía la necesitamos en el momento en que la necesitamos. Tiene que ser gestionable. No podemos esperar a enchufar nuestras fábricas cuando haya viento. Y eso es lo que tenemos que entender. Pero además aquí nos pasa otra cosa, pero que sea un poco más que sea provocador. Es que resulta que España sería autónoma energéticamente si usara sus propios recursos naturales que tenemos. En España tenemos uranio de sobras para centenares de años, pero resulta que, fijaros la fecha que pone ahí, 26 de noviembre de 2021. el gobierno, pocos meses antes de que estallara la guerra de Ucrania, prohibió la utilización de las minas de uranio de Salamanca y prohibió que se construyera una planta de enriquecimiento de uranio al lado de la mina. Seríamos autónomos. La broma del parón nuclear de hace 40 años, bueno, está ahí un recorte de La Vanguardia de enero del 2016, nos ha costado, bueno, siendo piadosos, 5.000 millones. Pero es que teníamos un plan en 1978 de construir 24 centrales que nos hubiera dado absolutamente autonomía. Y además, esto ya pasó en 1973. En 1973 ya tuvimos una crisis energética, y esa crisis energética ¿de qué fue debida? A de dependencia. Y los humanos o los europeos volvemos a tropezar exactamente en el mismo sitio, en que seguimos sin utilizar nuestra propia energía, teniendo en cuenta además pues eso, que hay nuevas tecnologías como la captura de carbono, etc. Pero no me quedo incitar. Pero oye, pensar una idea muy clara, ¿eh? Con energía lo podemos todo. Agua, tenemos en el mar toda la que queramos, le sacamos la sal, ¿cómo? Con energía. La agricultura, la calefacción, la industria, el transporte. La base de la pirámide de nuestra sociedad es el modelo energético que tenemos. Y ahí es donde Europa tiene un problema gravísimo que tendría que resolver. Segunda columna. Talento. Educación. Oye, aquí lo más poderoso que tenemos todos es nuestro cerebro. Y es así. Nos lo pueden quitar todo, ¿eh? Pero nuestro cerebro no. Y entonces, ¿y qué pasa? Que lo tenemos que usar. Y para eso, oye, ¿es una idea nueva? No, no. Templo de Confucio. Más de 2.000 años antes, más de 2.000 años, de hace más de 2 años, 3.000 igual. Yo me invitaron a China a dar una conferencia para hablar de Infinite Learning, Digital Economy, y resulta que lo que yo les iba a explicar, que es, oye, que tenéis que estar estudiando siempre, porque es la base de todo, resulta que estos señores ya hace 3.000 años que lo saben. Y a veces nos olvidamos de conceptos que ya hace 3.000 años la humanidad había aprendido, ¿vale? Porque al final esta es la pregunta clave en cualquier sociedad y en cualquier comunidad. ¿Somos capaces de crear talento, de mantener talento y de atraer talento? Y yo contesto, hombre, aquí somos capaces, bueno, en esta universidad por supuesto, pero digamos en Barcelona, en España en general, somos capaces de crear talento y talento muy bueno y muy reconocido. Pero no somos capaces de mantener ese talento, se nos están yendo la gente. Hay generaciones en que más del 30% de nuestros hijos ya están en otras ciudades, ya están en otros sitios. Se nos lo llevan al centro de Europa, a Alemania. ¿Y qué tenemos que aprender? Pues matemáticas y matemáticas y matemáticas. Y idiomas. ¿Qué es inteligencia artificial? Matemáticas. Tercera columna sobre la cual consideramos que tenemos que construir nuestra sociedad. Innovación. Oye, que las cosas cambian. Oye, esto era una tele y ahora tenemos esto. Antes, para que te llegara la señal a la televisión, mandábamos unas ondas que tenían un montón de interferencias y ahora mandamos ceros y unos. Y ahora mandamos bits y los mandamos por fibra óptica, que además, oye, no se deteriora nunca la señal. Teníamos teléfono, ahora tenemos el teléfono. Con lo cual, se produce una obsolescencia tanto del producto como de las soluciones, pero a su vez también se produce una obsolescencia de las habilidades y de la formación que tiene nuestra gente. Con lo cual seguimos obligados a que siempre tenemos que estar estudiando y aprendiendo y que esto es un no parar. Siempre tienes que estar dándole a la bici, pedaleando para que no se te caiga la bicicleta, ¿no? Porque la innovación, ¿qué tiene que buscar la innovación? La innovación tiene que buscar la eficiencia. O sea, hacer las cosas bien hechas con el mínimo de recursos necesarios, sin malgastar recursos. Ni tiempo, ni energía, etc. Y además, bueno, el mundo solo lo cambian los que están lo suficientemente locos para creerse que lo pueden cambiar, como decía el amigo Steve Jobs. Pero además pasa otra cosa. Si nosotros nos quedamos atrás, no vamos a poder competir con los otros, no vamos a poder competir con otros países, no vamos a poder competir con otras ciudades, no vamos a poder competir con nadie. Porque los otros sí que están evolucionando, sí que están innovando, sí que están cambiando, ¿vale? Aquí tenéis una lista que no diré de los 7 puntos de, transformación digital. La gente dice, ¿qué es transformación digital? Bueno, transformación digital es automatización, es informatización, es telecontrol, es telemetría. Ahora le llamamos transformación digital. Pero, por ejemplo, voy a citar solo los 2 primeros puntos. Y government. ¿Qué hacemos con tanta burocracia para mover papeles de un sitio a otro? Si esto lo hacen los ordenadores solos. Segundo tema. Tenemos un problema de envejecimiento. Cada vez tenemos enfermos más crónicos. Los recursos sanitarios son limitadísimos. Solo podemos solucionarlo poniendo tecnología, soluciones de e-health o de control remoto de control conseguir que la gente siga teniendo autonomía dentro de su casa porque no nos podemos tener a todos en un hospital, ni podemos tener un médico ni una enfermera cuidando a todo el mundo, ¿no? Cuarto punto, sostenibilidad. Una sociedad inteligente, una comunidad inteligente, consideramos que tiene que ser sostenible, que tiene un legado y que sabe mantener ese legado. ¿Para qué mantener ese legado? Bueno, en el fondo, oye, aquí estamos todos de paso, pero todos nacemos y todos nos morimos un día. En el fondo somos un eslabón más de la cadena, y tenemos que cuidar lo que hemos recibido, mejorarlo y transmitírselo a los que vienen detrás. ¿Vale? Oye, voy a poner un ejemplo muy claro, ¿no? Oye, Barcelona es un ejemplo brutal en urbanismo, líder mundial, la envidia de todo el mundo. Tenemos a 2 señores y en arquitectura, a Gaudí y a Ildefonso Cerdá. Esto no hay quien lo haya mejorado nunca. Pero claro, necesitamos hacer cosas de estas que fijaros cómo quedan, sucias y deterioradas. Al cabo de 2 días ya estamos haciendo inventos. ¿Esto es cuidar nuestro legado? Pues esto no es cuidar nuestro legado. Nuestro legado sería cuidar esto, que es el plan inicial de Gaudí, el diseño inicial de Gaudí, de cómo tiene que ser Barcelona, en el cual solo estaba previsto la construcción de dos de los lados de cada una de las manzanas. Al final, en vez de inventos, lo que tenemos que hacer igual es volver a veces sobre las raíces y la base. Cuando una cosa está bien diseñada, está bien diseñada. Está bien diseñada. Siguiente punto. Equidad. Bueno, este es otro, es Robert Bell, que es otro de los cofundadores, al igual que Lowe, del movimiento de comunidades inteligentes. A ver, la equidad, ¿qué entendemos por equidad? No estamos hablando de igualitarismo, no estamos hablando de, oye, todo el mundo tiene que ser igual y porque igual, como mucho, seremos todos igual de pobres. Pero igual de listos, por mucho que se empeñen, no lo vamos a ser nunca. Equidad es que todo el mundo pueda desarrollar las habilidades que tiene y adquirir de nuevas. Porque además, si tenemos gente que no tiene suficientes habilidades como para ganarse la vida, esto es un coste muy importante para la sociedad. Coste social y un coste económico que tenemos que resolver. Por esto una sociedad inteligente tiene que ser una sociedad equitativa. Bueno, y ahora tenemos las 5 columnas sobre las cuales edificar nuestra ciudad, nuestra comunidad. ¿Y la sexta cuál es? Pues en mi opinión la sexta es la más importante de todas. Es como un paraguas que va por encima de ellas y que no sale ni funciona ninguna de estas 5 si no tenemos este sexto indicador funcionando. ¿Cuál es este sexto indicador? El liderazgo y el buen gobierno. Frase de Lowe, que lo habéis visto antes, lo mismo. Lowe aquí nos dice de forma muy provocativa, nos explica que el liderazgo en el siglo XXI tiene que ser completamente diferente a la visión tradicional del liderazgo que hemos tenido. ¿Qué teníamos en el liderazgo? Teníamos gente que ganaba batallas, que ganaba guerras, que ganaba enfrentamientos, que creaba conflictos políticos, taking political risk. A ver, pregunto, ¿Qué es más fácil? ¿Armar una bronca? ¿Romper algo? ¿O construir algo? Montar una bronca está tirado. Es una muestra total en el fondo, de falta de fortaleza total. Lo que realmente es difícil, por tanto, lo que realmente deberíamos premiar es aquellas personas que son capaces de crear colaboración, de crear cooperación. Aquellos líderes que son capaces de construir, de mejorar, los que son capaces de armar broncas y follones por todo. Y en cambio estamos premiando a los otros. Líderes que tumben muros y construyan puentes. ¿Que es muy difícil cambiar? Sí, hay muchísimos libros que lo explican y que os lo podéis leer. Aquí tenéis un autor que yo os recomiendo mucho, que es el doctor María Alonso Puig, en el cual él dice, oye, los humanos solo cambiamos cuando nos damos cuenta que no tenemos otro remedio que cambiar. Entonces digo, oye, y en esta época digital y en estos momentos, ¿qué características tendría que tener este liderazgo? Bueno, yo voy a citar 5 características. La primera de todas, y además algunas muy barcelonesas, como Cristóbal Colón. Colón arrived to Barcelona after discover America. ¿Cuál es la idea de Colón? Oye, Colón no era un descubridor. Colón es un innovador. Es una persona que busca hacer una cosa de forma más eficiente a cómo se hacía hasta entonces. ¿Cómo se iba a la India? Dando la vuelta a África. Y este señor dice, no, en vez de ir hacia el este, yo voy a ir hacia el oeste porque me voy a encontrar a la India. No se encontró la India, creo que encontró otro campamento, pero está claro que pensó completamente, tuvo la mente abierta, pensó de forma global. Segundo, cualquier creación, cualquier solución empieza en la imaginación, empieza en los sueños. Y tenemos el ejemplo, el mejor del mundo. La Sagrada Familia de Gaudí, este edificio de uno de sus discípulos. Pues eso es lo que tenemos que fomentar, líderes creativos, líderes imaginativos, con voluntad de cambio, como John Fitzgerald Kennedy, porque vamos a la luna, pero vamos a la luna no porque es fácil, vamos a la luna porque es difícil. Porque si no asumimos que el cambio, que la realidad, que mejorar es difícil, pues entonces nos quedamos en lo que, bueno, y no me gusta, pero lo que todo el mundo dice, la zona de confort. Y entonces no evolucionamos, no mejoramos, los problemas se nos pudren. ¿Cómo que tiene que ser este líder que necesitamos? Pues tiene que ser un líder que sea capaz de alinear a la sociedad en frente a un objetivo, una misión, ¿no? Las compañías americanas todas enseguida, cuando se te presenta alguien de una empresa americana, te dice our mission is, our mission is lo que sea. Tienen claro qué están haciendo, qué valor están aportando. Pues ese es el tipo de liderazgo que necesitamos, no un líder que trate a la gente como que están alienadas. Si tú te sientes alienado, si tú te sientes oprimido, si tú te sientes a disgusto, pues no trabajas a gusto ni para tu sociedad, ni para tu familia, ni para tu empresa, para nada. Como os he dicho antes en una presentación, la primera cuando he hablado del talento, hemos dicho que lo más fuerte que tenemos es nuestro cerebro. Bueno, es imprescindible de todos los libros que han salido por aquí, todas las ideas, esta igual es la más importante de todas. Es el doctor Viktor Frankl, el libro El hombre en busca de sentido, que nos enseña que todas las dificultades, lo gordas que sean y los problemas que tenemos, ya antes he esbozado un poco cuál era el ecosistema en el que nos estábamos, y problemas geoestratégicos, que si Ucrania, que si la crisis económica, que si la crisis energética, que si la sequía, que si no sé qué. Pero cómo afrontamos estos problemas lo explica el doctor Viktor Frankl, superviviente de un campo de concentración nazi. Solo depende de nosotros, es nuestra libertad única, es nuestra última elección. Entonces, en mi visión del liderazgo, el líder es esa persona que es capaz de hacer entender a los otros que es capaz de hacer entender a los otros que pueden escoger esta actitud y que es mucho mejor escoger la actitud positiva que no una negativa y destructiva. Bueno, esto es mi explicación de los 6 parámetros. Esta es la oficial del think tank. Bueno, ellos hablan, como veis, iré muy deprisa, de tres parámetros que fomentan el crecimiento económico y 3 parámetros que fomentan el crecimiento social y cultural. Aquí tenéis un poco la explicación que ellos dan. Yo, a quien quiera, obviamente yo voy a compartir mi presentación con todos vosotros y os los podéis leer y estudiar en casa tranquilamente, ¿vale? Bueno, oye, ¿y esto hay algún sitio donde funcione todo esto que nos has explicado? Porque esto está igual, bueno, igual os ha parecido muy bonito, igual os ha parecido muy utópico, o igual os ha parecido absolutamente irrealizable, ¿no? Bueno, yo voy a poner un ejemplo donde esto está funcionando, ¿vale? Que es Taiwán, ¿vale? Bueno, Taiwán es una isla de 350 kilómetros de largo por 150 de ancho, tiene 22 distritos, viven 24 millones de personas absolutamente hacinadas, la densidad de habitante por kilómetro cuadrado, lo tenéis ahí, son 640, en España estamos en 93, tienen una renta per cápita superior a la nuestra y aguantan no sé cuántos terremotos cada año, aguantan no sé cuántos tifones cada año. Las montañitas esas que parecen ahí marrones, que parecen que no son nada, tienen 4.000 metros de altura todas, o sea que apenas queda sitio donde vivir los 24 millones, pero además tienen que tener algo de agricultura, ¿Y cómo se salen estos señores? Bueno, estos señores se salen porque 15 de sus 22 distritos siguen esta metodología y han sido premiados por ello. Aquí veis en la foto que fue el febrero de 2020, cuando ya estaba estallando la pandemia. A mí me dijeron, oye, lo tenemos todo controlado, 20, y yo, no sé, cogí y me fui. Estoy ahí la foto con la presidenta. Con la presidenta del país y con John Yang, que es otro de los fundadores del think tank. Y han gestionado la pandemia, hombre, muchísimo mejor que la mayoría de gente. Tengo algún artículo por ahí que podéis leer sobre cómo han gestionado Taiwán la pandemia. Bueno, ya ha salido antes, porque lo ha dicho Lou, que este año ha vuelto a salir premiada como comunidad inteligente New Taipei, para explicarlo así en que lo entendáis, es, digamos, lo que era el Hospitalet de Taipei, y que, bueno, era una ciudad, pues, industrial, etcétera, y que ahora, bueno, es una metrópoli de 4 millones de habitantes, pues que tiene todo, y además cuidando muchísimo los temas ecológicos, etcétera, ¿no? Que podéis leer también la explicación de por qué ha sido premiada esta ciudad. Pero oye, lo más importante de todo, oye, el resultado de una isla aislada diplomáticamente, sin recursos naturales, porque están aislados diplomáticamente, tienen en estos momentos la tecnología más avanzada de todas. Fabrican, está este SMC y pone el 55%, pero fabrican el 60 o el 70% de los chips del planeta, y además los más avanzados de todos. O sea, todos dependemos de la tecnología. ¿Cómo lo han hecho? Muy fácil. Muy fácil o no, muy difícil. Me lo dijo un profesor universitario. Me explicó, oye, es que Taiwán no tenemos nada, solo tenemos una cosa. ¿Cuál? Cerebro. Nosotros también. Pero digo, es que estos lo usan. Usan la inteligencia, y toda su sociedad se basa en el desarrollo de la inteligencia. Bueno, para Barcelona, para así picar un poco. Hombre, Barcelona también hemos hecho cosas buenísimas, y ya veis, somos referentes en muchas cosas. Hombre, yo abogo para que recuperemos el espíritu olímpico en el 30 aniversario de los Juegos, y que no renunciemos a los proyectos súper ambiciosos que tenemos, como es acabar la Sagrada Familia. Acabarla como Dios manda, O sea, con el paseo delante, perdonad porque la fotografía no he encontrado otra en internet de más calidad, con el paseo delante y la escalinata por encima de la calle de Mallorca. Esto es un proyecto de ciudad, y yo reto aquí, que sé que hay candidatos a la alcaldía, reto para que asuman esto como proyecto de ciudad y como proyecto que sustituya al espíritu olímpico y le vuelva a dar esta vitalidad que tenemos aparcada, o que tenemos un poco dormida. Porque, oye, ya lo sabéis, Joder, ¿por qué se llama Tibidabo la montaña que tenemos aquí arriba? ¿No lo sabéis? Tibidabo, todo esto te daré. porque algún barcelonés que estaba orgulloso de su ciudad decidió ponerle Tibidabo porque cree que el diablo escogió Barcelona para tentar a Jesús. ¿Por qué? Lo que dice John Young, ¿no? Oye, cuantísimas ciudades en el mundo. Esta es una entrevista que le hicieron hace 3 o 4 años. 3 o 4 años el señor Berraondo, el periodista reconocido, ¿no? En mi despacho y dice, joder, pero si no sé qué os quejáis, barceloneses, si hay millones de ciudades que querrían tener los mismos problemas que vosotros, que os envidia todo el mundo, que el turismo, pues si todo el mundo quiere turismo, ¿no? Porque aunque tengamos una lectura negativa y muy maltusiana de muchas cosas, pensar que en estos momentos tenemos la mejor tecnología que hemos tenido nunca. Yo he citado 4 ideas muy por encima, pero ahora tenemos que usar. Tenemos la mejor capacidad de comunicación entre seres humanos que hemos tenido nunca. O sea, yo aquí he invitado a Peter y he invitado a Alex, que los encontré en Taiwán y que he mantenido el contacto. En Taiwán, no, en Vietnam. We meet in Vietnam. Y que estamos colaborando con gente absolutamente de todos lados en el think tank, gente de culturas completamente diferentes, de países absolutamente diferentes. Y tenemos un gran conocimiento entre unos y otros. O sea, eso sí es muy complicado. Pero en el fondo, pensarlo bien, la humanidad nunca había estado tan bien como estamos ahora. Bueno, pues yo os animo a que os involucréis dentro de este movimiento. Aquí, bueno, pues hasta el 31 de enero se están admitiendo candidaturas para los premios de la edición del año que viene. Presentarse es gratis, podéis promover vosotros vuestras ciudades, no tiene por qué ser el ayuntamiento, puede ser una asociación profesional, puede ser quien quiera. Os invitamos a tomar a participar en uno de los cursos que hace habitualmente sin coste el think tank, ¿vale? Nos mandáis un mail y os mandaremos el link para que podáis participar, o en el próximo webinar también igual. Bueno, el siguiente evento que vamos a tener va a ser la presentación de porque el think tank da tres categorías de premios, el top 21, top 7 y top 1. Pues los top 21 del año que viene se van a conocer entre el 22-23 de febrero, ¿vale? Obviamente, como ya ha dicho Lou, pues invitamos a participar en la reunión de Nueva York de dentro de un año. Perdón, que ya me he pasado, le he dado demasiado deprisa al botón. Bueno, y la última idea para terminar mi presentación. Oye, que la ciudad funcione, que nuestra comunidad funcione, es solo responsabilidad. Ahí pone influencers, de los que lideran, de los que mandan, de los políticos, ¿no? Ese es el gran error que tenemos. Es obligación de todos nosotros. Todos nosotros tenemos que empujar, tenemos que pedir accountability, que se dice en el mundo anglosajón, tenemos que pedir explicaciones de cómo se gestionan las cosas y cómo gestionan las administraciones que elegimos para que hagan uso de la cosa común. Tenemos que tener explicaciones, pero a la vez y tenemos que empujarles. O sea, el cambio no podemos delegar, tenemos que delegar y supervisar. Y eso es la última idea fuerte, ¿no? O sea, os animamos a todos que, oye, a ver si nos movemos todos y nos quejamos, bueno, o hablamos más, ¿no? Tratamos todos de influir más, ¿vale? Bueno, aquí tenéis mi currículum. En la presentación hay un montón de links para que podáis profundizar en todas estas ideas y artículos y vídeos y un montón de información que podéis consultar. Y aquí tenéis mis datos de contacto y muchísimas gracias.
Muchas gracias, Agustín Argelich. Thank you very much for introducing to us these ideas, also for the 5+1 key factors to build intelligence communities. Our next speaker is Peter Porthein. Peter is an international consultant in the development of smart communities. He was the director of the Eindhoven Brainport Smart District, and founder of the Eindhoven International Project Office. Eindhoven was awarded Smart Community for the Year in 2011. Please, Peter, if you can come here. I have pronounced properly Eindhoven. Yeah? Thank you.
So, you can imagine that being a speaker after August, it makes you very modest. Because today I'm speaking in this beautiful venue. I'm not a scientist, so what do I do here in the aula of a university? I'm not a priest, so what I'm doing in this beautiful church building? And still, I have been invited to share with you. I must admit, I have not read all the books that August presented to you. So what I will do is I'll share with you a book which I'm writing now today and tomorrow and in the next, hopefully, years of my life. And that's a book on the transformation of societies and the transformation of cities. And as I was introduced, some of you might know Eindhoven, but I was a speaker at the Smart City Expo earlier today, and most of the people don't know where to locate Eindhoven. But if I tell you Eindhoven, I'm understanding how public and private should work, could work, sometimes don't, and sometimes work together in what we call the PPPs. So in the last 15 years, I started to call myself a public entrepreneur. How can we discover the verge of public-private partnership for the benefit of the local city, the local province, and the local community? And actually, from my past experience as a tech entrepreneur, I decided that my passion was not only by selling technology and implementing software, but more about how can we apply technologies for the benefit and the sake of the people who are intended to use it. And we also started to realize that there are a lot of technologies introduced on cities, on government, on national level, but it is also the meaningful use of technology which will make the difference and where it will actually impact our society. So we started our advisory office like 10 years ago, and I was part of the team that worked on Eindhoven to actually reach this smart city title, which August was referring to, because all these rankings are very nice, because it's not actually expressing how good you are, but it is at least telling a message to the rest of the world that helps you to expose yourselves, to brand yourselves, and also do some marketing communications that will help you to attract investment, which is always necessary if you want to fulfill your dreams and also make these ambitions come to life. Because you can talk about broadband, you can talk about all kind of infrastructure, but if you don't have the money and you don't have the business to support you to make these investments, the people in your city will not be benefiting from these technologies. So it's always finding this right balance. And we learned that what we have been doing in the Western European countries is very much applicable to other parts of the world, especially those parts of the world who are still like 10 to 20 years behind in their socio-economic development, but they're catching up fast. And countries like Vietnam and Thailand and Bangladesh in the Southeast Asian hemisphere, but also closer to home here in the eastern part of Europe, like Bulgaria, Romania, many countries who are still depending on, let's say, old-dated, non-sustainable economic models, like economies based on carbon fuels, economies based on mining, heavy metal. I mean, all business that is not sustainable and will not allow them to continue if they somewhere in the next 30 years want to reach and also to commit to like a 2050 climate agreement. The climate adaptation in all these countries will eventually force them to change their economic model. That means if we're not going to adapt to that, society will suffer and people will not be able to live their lives as they have been used to. So starting to apply this kind of experience in other parts of the world is very promising. It's also very meaningful, because in my country, in the Netherlands, and I assume that it's similar in Spain, it takes a lot of politics, it takes a lot of politicians and a lot of people to discuss and make small improvements. And then you think when in the next 2 years you make the next step, unfortunately there are elections and you have a new provincial or a new local government and we're starting all over again. So the impact of all these efforts is relatively small compared to the impact we see in other parts of the world. So that was the main driver for me If you want to make your footprint in life, it's not about making the money, but how can you apply your experience in those parts of the world where this impact can be meaningful and also, let's say, very tangible. So if I go back to Eindhoven and to give you some historic perspective, you might know Amsterdam as being the capital, and it's also that area where you find most of the financial head office and obviously our main airport, Schiphol. So Amsterdam is well known as what we call the airport city in the Netherlands. And obviously because of COVID, we learned that airport models are not so much sustainable as they used to be in the past. And the second area where we are a pillar of our economy is the Rotterdam area. It's where we have our main seaport, which used to be the biggest port in the world until the Chinese started to produce and took over that position. So Rotterdam is well known for refineries, oil, and also logistics. But if you look at logistics, it's a lot of work, it's a lot of volume, it's a lot of polluting work, but it's only a small added value if you look at the financials. And the story of Eindhoven, which I will share with you a little later, brought us a tech industry which is mainly knowledge and also innovation based. So we have a relatively small revenue, but we have a very high level of added value, and that means that we can pay for our innovation and our own progress. So eventually Eindhoven started as the last in row, and now gradually Eindhoven, the city of innovation, is starting to become more and more important. You can imagine if you're focusing on high tech, on semiconductors, that the disruptive events like COVID really helped to accelerate this development. So the knowledge industry in Eindhoven is more sustainable than the logistics industry in Rotterdam, or maybe the airport business we do in the capital. Well, back to Eindhoven. When Philips was at the early days, more than 100 years ago, looking for a place in the Netherlands to start producing their first light bulbs, they were not looking for innovation, they were not looking for smart people, they were looking for cheap land and cheap labor. So they selected Eindhoven being the place in the Netherlands where they could find the cheapest land and the cheapest cost of employment. Because the fashion industry and also the tobacco industry in Eindhoven in that time suffered. So we had a very high unemployment. So Philips went to Eindhoven because they could find the cheapest employment, and they got the land for free from the local city. And you have to remember that because this is an analogy which you can see when you look in Asia. What is the main reason that many large manufacturers went to China, went to Vietnam, and went to Thailand? Because they were looking for cheap labor and cheap land. So in the history, we see some similarities, that these considerations that day were quite similar to the reason why many large companies like Procter & Gamble and Unilever and Nike all organizing their production in Asian countries, because they still rely on the idea that cheap labor and cheap land can attract investment. The unfortunate part of that decision is that most of that work is at a very low cost and a very low added value. So they bring in some raw materials, you produce the goods, and we'll ship it out again. So it only leaves a small footprint in terms of economic value, but it's taking out a very high percentage of your very precious employment, which nowadays is basically the main driver why we can see cities and regions flourish, both socially and economically. So Eindhoven started to become the hometown of what at the top of its fame was the biggest electronics company in the world, employing like almost 500,000 people, producing everything from your toothbrush to medical equipment, CT scanners, X-ray equipment, and everything in between. So Philips grew to a certain size comparable to what you could say as Samsung today. But the only thing they did not manage is that if you're growing and growing and you're not diversifying and you're not integrating all these products in your company, that at a certain point in time you reach a size that you're no longer capable of managing all these different activities within one big conglomerate. And the other thing they forgot is that if you do upstream, high value type of products, but you also do the downstream, low value, that the organization will be more and more costly, and at a certain point of time these low cost activities are no longer affordable. And a part of my story is about how you never should waste a good crisis. So the bad thing that happened is that Philips almost went bankrupt in the late 90s. They lost about 200,000 of their people, and in Eindhoven the unemployment rate went up to more than 25%. So that is at that time that people started to realize that your dependency on one large organization, socially and economically, because Philips was a very social company. They built the company town, they took care of almost everything related to the lives of their employees. They took care of sports facilities, leisure, medical, education. It was all part of a socio-integrated company which laid the foundation for the city which was built on that. But obviously if you start to diversify and you have to sell off your part of your business and you lose your employment, also the social part of Philips went down as well. So the city started to suffer. We had to sell down our healthcare facilities, education was under pressure, so the whole system was starting to implode. And it was in these days, and then I'm talking the late 90s, that the local leadership of our city, the chair of the university and also our Chamber of Commerce start to realize that there should be a different way of governing this kind of regional development. If you want to balance social and economic values in a way that everybody can benefit from that, so it is in an inclusive way, we have to reinvent the way we have did that before. And normally it is a siloed approach. You have your private businesses, you have your academia, like your universities, and you have your public organizations like local, provincial and national government. And we start to realize that because Eindhoven is still a small city, we are only like 250,000 people. And if you want to achieve and want to be successful in the way you develop your city, you have to do it in a smart way. And that smart way was that we brought these three entities together, universities, private side, and also the government. And we instituted what we call the model of the triple helix, the golden triangle. So no longer were universities and private business and government working alongside but separate, but they started to integrate, to commit to a kind of integrated roadmap of development. If companies need employment and need curricula in a certain direction of technology, the universities would align their curricula and also make sure that their demands in terms of labor were matched by the, and it's not only universities, especially vocational colleges, so it's the whole chain of education. And at the same time, the local governments start to realize that if you want to facilitate that kind of growth, both socio and economically, you also have to accommodate the needs of these parties. So these three stakeholders, they formally got together, and that is what we call Brainport today. Brainport is the socio-economic development board of the city of Eindhoven, where these three entities merged and started to work. And still, we still have elections for our local city council, but there is a supervising board which sits on that, and that is a combination of these three working together. And eventually that economic board also took the decision to make a kind of selected approach in what are the areas where this region can be successful. And I think that's an important lesson, because many cities, and we meet a lot, because Augustin is meeting these ICF communities. I have the privilege of working both in Europe and in Asia. And every city always has the right to fail, because they all try to do the same things again and again. We want to be successful in any direction. We have a social sciences faculty, we have a technical university, and everybody is trying to accommodate all these interests and at the same time. So we do a little bit of this and we do a little bit of that, and that means we go in all kinds of directions. And I think the European Commission helped us a lot when they introduced the idea of the more selected approach to innovation, smart specialization. So when you know where your assets are, when you know where you want to grow, you also know where you don't want to be. And that means that we took a firm decision on the Eindhoven regional level that we have some areas where we are growing our economy, and that means that we will be aligning all our resources in that direction, but we also decided those areas we will refrain from, to make sure that Eindhoven is not only competing on a national level, but more important that we are in a position to compete on a global level. Because today the world is a global competition, and that means that if you're in Barcelona, your competitors are not in Spain or in Europe, but they are in the other geographies around the world. And eventually that helped us to, together with no longer Philips, but many companies who spun out of Philips, like ASML, like NXP, then these are the semiconductor type of businesses to build the ecosystem, as we call it, Brainport today. And I think I don't have many of these slides, but one of the one I always use in Asia, every presentation, is you don't have to be big, you don't have to be rich, you don't have to be the strongest, but in this time it is about the ability to adapt to changing circumstances in the world. And we are facing these year by year. We have just finished COVID, and we just are in the middle of a crisis in Ukraine, and we all see the disruptive effects of that. And the ability to adapt to this kind of new situations, new realities, is deciding which regions in the world will be benefiting and also which regions will be hurt most by that. Who could have imagined that in the last 2 years, digitalization all over Europe tripled in terms of application and also uptake in education, in homework, and in any aspect of society? Who could have imagined that in the last 3 months in Europe, we have saved more energy on fuels and on gas as a total population compared to the last 5 years? Why? Because of the price development as a result of the Ukraine tensions, and also because people are getting hurt in their income. So there are disruptive effects as a part of a crisis, but we have a downside, but we always say, how can we make use of these at in uncertain times? And as I told you, this is I think the interesting model where we brought these 3 different circles together. So that the triple helix was the way how we aligned these 3 different entities. And we also learned, if you want to be successful on a city or on a regional level, it is a very, very careful configuration of what we call an ecosystem. An ecosystem around social development, an ecosystem around innovation, and that is a very delicate balance of putting together all the right elements that work together at the right time, at the right moment. So managing and configuring these ecosystems is almost like a science. This is the success factor that will decide if a local city manages to reach new targets and new development. And this is also, I think, a good picture that shows that you can set up an innovation campus, you can build a new campus, you put a building down, but the value is not so much in the building, the value is in the software that we put in the building. If you can create the ecosystem that brings together research and development, that brings together innovation, that is where the magic happens. And this is also actually the model and the concept we are introducing in Asian countries. Because they think you build a city, you set up a campus, and you hope that the university will come and that will fill the buildings with innovation. But nothing happens. So we have to create the right circumstances that innovation can happen, and that mainly starts with R&D, coming out of universities like yours. Well, I will skip. And I'll give you a very practical example to what that can actually, what the outcome of such a process can be. We had the privilege of being introduced in the south of Vietnam, in the Ho Chi Minh area, which is the manufacturing hotspot of the country. And that is where we have been invited, based on some of the experience we have in Eindhoven, how these principles could help the largest Vietnamese manufacturing region to reach out and also prepare for the next steps of developing their socio-economic plans. And this is where you see the similarity between Europe and also Asia. Coming from a traditional agricultural background, they managed to make a first step towards basic manufacturing based on low cost of land and labor into the next generation of industrialization. And now they're even starting to reach an aim for the higher income level. And if I tell you that this took like almost 100 years to go through in the Netherlands, they're doing it in almost 30 years. And that is the speed of innovation. It is also the use of experience we have here in the West, which can be applied in a much quicker and more efficient way in Asia. So this is actually what is happening, and this is where we are reaching for now. And obviously, that works if you can deliver the tangible results and also the tangible initiatives and projects that can help a country to build the confidence and the pride based on the first success to actually implement these strategies. And they have been working alongside this road for 5-6 years now. and they managed to get from a low to a middle income level, which is obviously a big step. That's going from $300 a month to 1,000, and then even beyond if you reach the high income level. And high income also means that you can afford, as a society, to pay for the reasonable level of education and also healthcare facilities. So the quality of life is directly impacted by the ability of people to make a reasonable and also an income and also pay for a reasonable living. And this is typically a development curve that you can project on Vietnam. You can look at it in Thailand. We have just set up office in Bangladesh. And then you question Bangladesh, then probably you will think about floodings and child labor and cheap fashion. And that is all true. But there are 180 million people in that country who also want to make this step to the next level of income. They already have like 1 million people as independent software developers. So these countries are taking big steps, and they also have a large home market which will actually help them to excel this kind of developments. So basically that is what we are doing. That is the book I'm writing. So it's not the science part of the book, but it is the practical application, how we can make an impact based on what we learn here today, what we learned here today on the Smart City Expo, because a part of our work is to share this experience in a practical way so that it can be applied in other parts of the world who are in need. They have a very urgent need to change their economy, to make it more robust, to make it more sustainable. And I think that is the part of the work where we also apply these indicators from ICF. You can choose any model with any kind of indicators, but the most important thing is that if you start to measure yourself against some of these indicators, it also makes it more transparent. It makes it transparent in terms of progress, and that also helps to open up countries like Vietnam and Thailand to become more aware of those areas where they have to make their improvements. So we have also introduced our Vietnamese friends in the same ICF indicators, and they managed to be awarded now 3 years in a row. And last October we had the privilege of joining them at the ceremony in Ohio, where they again reached among these top 7 countries in the world. So these are typically ways of a practical way of applying knowledge, applying the knowledge that Augustine also shared with you, in a way that it delivers tangible outcomes in countries that have a high need to transform. And just give you a very, very practical example, we signed and we also managed to start building the new Lego factory in Asia, and you were saying, what the heck, Lego? It's a $1 billion US investment. They're building a fully renewable-based factory, which is 100% circular in the way they use the goods and also produce the whole factory. So if you put the right system in the right place and you start to send out the message, you can attract different type of investment, and this is typically a type of investment which help countries to prosper, which eventually will benefit all people in the country involved. And it can be Vietnam, it can be Thailand, but more close it will be also on the eastern borders of Europe. So that was, I think, a little of my experience of very practically applying these ecosystems for the benefit and the sake of making impact on the local society, which is mainly my passion and also the work we do from IPO. And that is where we work together with Augustine in ICF. And fortunately, we have some more Augustines in other parts of the world. So that is a big network where the global perspective is also part of the reference we can bring in. And we are very much privileged to be here today to pick your brains and to have your feedbacks and questions that can help us to improve on the work we do. And we're kind of missionaries in the world in preaching this. And I'm very glad that Alexander will speak after me, one of our associates in the world. And I think that is where I will close my presentation. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you very much for sharing with us these experiences. Our next speaker is Alexander Schmidt. Alexander is the founder of founder and CEO of Babel. In the Fraunhofer Institute for Industrial Engineering, he started working on business model for the charging infrastructure of electric vehicles and smart grids. He led several nationally and international publicly and privately funded research projects in the field of smart mobility and data use in cities. Please, if you can come here, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the brilliant introduction. Thanks also to the previous speakers for giving me some points to build on, and thank you all for coming out and taking the time to listen. So my presentation will not be about the great vision on how the future of cities look like. I'm not going to paint a picture for you. My presentation will be about one simple, but in my way, in my understanding, very crucial thing about speed. The speed we need to innovate. And I'll do that in 3 steps. I'm going to first define the problem with you. Then I'm going to, I'm an engineer, so I'm going to go through some practical projects with you to see how this can work on the ground. And then I want to talk to you how we can do this at a larger scale. Now, let's start with the problem that we have in transforming our communities, our cities. We are now in the year 2022. Europe has pledged to be the first climate neutral continent by the year 2050. That is 28 years from now. Some cities, including, by the way, Barcelona, have pledged and are signing a contract to be climate neutral by 2030. That is 8 years from now. Now we have heard from Peter that the light bulb is a big success story out of the last century. The light bulb is a rather simple technology that took 50 to 60 years to scale through the world, to reach most homes, most places in the world. 50 to 60 years. One technology to reach the most of the world. Some cities in Europe now have 8 years, others have 28. So what we are talking about is a completely new speed of innovation in our communities that we need. And actually our cities are super efficient in handling long-term projects. So our cities have been built to manage investments in infrastructure, in buildings, in roads that have lifespans over 50 years or at least decades. Now that is some research that we have done while I was still at the Fraunhofer Research Society. The technology life cycle of lots of the things we are talking about now that can improve our cities is 2 years or less. If you're talking about software, it's even just 6 months or less. Right? So we have on the one hand the problem that we have very little time to achieve our targets, on the other hand that we don't have structures to actually keep up with that speed. Now, from those here in the room, who can tell me what city this is? Show of hands. You can just shout something in as well. Which city is this? Oh, it's being called out by the guy on the... Paris is a good one. It's not Paris, but not far off. Next one, please. Vienna. Right language already. Another one, last guess. Pardon? Berlin, yes sir. How did you recognize? There are some corners here, there's a Tiergarten and some place. But actually what you see here, and hopefully the light gives it, so we have 2 different colors of public lighting here. Right? So there's completely different technology being used here for public lighting on this side than on this side. And actually this border that you see, that is the Berlin Wall. It's been gone for 33 years. But we still have a divided city when it comes to technology. This is the status on where we are now in the speed of innovation. And again, we only have 8 years left if you are Barcelona, 28 years left if you are the rest of Europe. That was 33 years ago when the wall fell. And now something that the intelligent community movement is doing very well and that I'm a big fan of and that also is in the heart of how we work is we are not just using technology for the sake of technology, but we are actually using it for the benefit of our societies, of our communities. So let us not forget on why we are doing all these things. One of the reasons we are implementing technologies in our communities is because we are raising efficiency potential. So that means we can do more with less. We're going to use less resources, less coal, less oil, less gas. Second one is we can provide better service. We don't have to go to the administration again to get our tickets, to get our passports, these kind of things. We can do that better. We can also make better decisions because we have more evidence, we have more data, we know more about the past, we can predict the future better. And then the last thing, and that we should never forget whenever we talk about technology, it's also there and it has brought us together more closely. I don't know who is listening to this now from where in the world, but it helps us to better communicate to each other, to our communities within cities, to our citizens. And we can do this on all sectors there are in the city. All of this can be applied, all of these things can be done in the mobility area, in the health area, waste management, energy. The potential of technology, the potential of the right use of technology is everywhere. And now I want to do some examples, and I'm going to start with a small one. And I love to do this example because it's one that shows how we can speed up the process of innovation. Again, let's not forget, 8 years or 28 years to this. This is a lovely small city in the south of Germany. It's close to the French border. It's called Ettlingen. So it has 40,000 inhabitants, close to Karlsruhe. As you can see, it has a very beautiful inner city center, old one, very narrow roads. Right, and the city has approached us and said, hey, we have a problem here, and that's a good thing. We start with a problem, right, that we want to improve. We have these delivery vans that bring all the Amazon packages and the packages into the roads, and they block the roads when they deliver them. And of course, always the motor is on, so we have a lot of emissions, right? So how can we improve this? And this is here in this inner city area, so it's a problem that you can very well define here. And we're not talking about a lot, so just also let's talk about size. It's a small city, 40,000 inhabitants. So we're talking about 80 packages a day, and of course the maximum is during December. But it was clear from the beginning that the target for the city was, okay, we want to reduce congestion, and we want to reduce emissions from parcel delivery. So how can you approach this now? You can do long studies, you can do all the analytics, what we did. And that is actually a formulation that the Commissioner for Innovation from the city of Amsterdam gave me on Monday, is we stole ideas. And that's what I from now on will call it as well. We stole ideas from other cities. This is the city of Nottingham. From them we could learn, they had a very similar system. From them we could learn that it was a partnership with the local administration and some local delivery companies. We also learned, for example, from Munich, that the way they implemented this cargo bike system, so instead of vans bringing in the parcels, bikes bring in the parcels, you can create a 5% reduction in traffic, which is, for those of us that are transport engineers, I'm one, that's actually rather significant. We spend a lot of money on these kinds of things. And from Madrid we learned that it's good to have an external center where you bring the parcels and you we bring them in. So that's an example from Hamburg. So putting all of these things together, you can very easily, so you take the bits and you take the pieces, you create a new picture, something that fits on exactly the problem for the city of Ettlingen. Then you have, if you know the roles, who does what, all the things that you need, you can decide who to do it with. You can compare different cargo bike operators, you can compare different producers of package stations, and then very quickly you have a project available. This project, it started just with the problem, without financing, and was implemented from the idea until implementation in 12 months. And that is the kind of speed we are looking for. For those of you that work with public areas, very often, just for the decision to be made that a problem is a problem, a year easily goes by. But with this kind of speed, with this kind of approach, we can speed up the process of implementing solutions that really solve problems in our cities. And again, we can do this in all these sectors, the same concept, as long as we think modular, right? Let's steal the bits and pieces, the right ideas from the right areas. Now, if we do this and actually modularize those solutions, I'm going back to the example of lighting, and you look at a lots of different lighting cases from all across Europe, you will actually see that there is a bunch of things that all these smart lighting cases have in common, right? So always they have LED lighting, always they are connected to a central control system, always they monitor ambient light. So these are the kinds of things that all of these solutions, no matter where they're implemented across Europe, have in common. And then there are things that adjust them to the local needs. Some provide public Wi-Fi, some provide monitoring of noise, some provide monitoring of air quality. And now if you turn this around a little bit and we think again about speeding up the process and speeding up investment, there is a bunch of parts of a solution, of a technological solution that can scale very quickly because they are identical in all cities. So this part here, which we call the core of a solution, they can be jointly procured of several municipalities, and here we can create real economies of scale. This is the core of a solution also for companies. That means this is a core of where you can create economies of scale, where you can mass produce. But we live in societies, and I'm really a fan of our European model, the way we do it, that not just every city, but every neighborhood, every district has its own vibe, its own personality. So you cannot just put the same technology everywhere. So you need to individualize. And these are then the elements that you have here, those here on the right, where you can individualize, add on, because we are talking about modular technologies, modular solutions of implementation. And that's just a kind of thinking I want to give to you. Not just think of solutions and projects as one thing that can only be replicated, which it doesn't work. As Peter said, it's like there are things that can be replicated, things that cannot be replicated. Let's cut them into pieces and think that way. Now let's see how that looks like if you're talking not just about one small problem with 80 parcels a day in a small city, but let's see how that looks like in a large city, Eastern Germany now, that's the city of Leipzig, and how that looks like for climate neutrality until 2050. So we did an analysis paid for by the European Investment Bank, and that's that I put up now because we've heard about the war, and also you have heard about the price changes in oil and gas across Europe. The city of Leipzig runs their primary energy demand, over half of it is on gas, on natural gas. So you can see how much of a problem for them that is at the moment. So what we did, and that's the beauty of it, we analyzed what kind of technologies can help to move away from the fossil fuels, from their dependency on external resources, and how, what technologies and what areas can help them move forward. But, and that's really what they did in a smart way, is they didn't only look at it as a technology buyer, because it's not just the city that's part of this initiative, it's also the private sector. So they checked also in their community, within the city, what kind of knowledge, what kind of capabilities, what kind of companies do we already have, and how do we get them involved in the process, and where can we grow our capabilities with these companies so that we don't only import solutions, but we become an exporter of technology and solutions. And this is a stepwise process that you can then put into a roadmap and have a plan, a long-term plan that you have created together with your arm-length companies, utility companies, with the private sector, with academia, to really get from where they were, you saw the slide, to climate neutrality in 2050. So this is how this can look like on a large scale for a city that's also part of the group that wants to be climate neutral very quickly. Now, this information are something that we provide for free, available for all of you to use. So if you're a student and want to see how communities live for the future, you can just go on our website, have a look, just put the search term you're interested in there, look for the solutions that have been implemented already in cities all across Europe, learn from them. The important part is also there's always the practical knowledge. So what did we learn in the process? What did not work out? Where did we fail? So that you can learn from them and do the next project just and that's the core again of my presentation, just a little bit faster so that we can reach our targets until 2050 being the first climate neutral continent. That is where I will end. If you want to look at some of these great innovations, because we are not alone in this fight, there's a lots of companies and innovators out there that work on this on a daily basis. You can download, again, this is for free, of course. You can download a report that has just been launched 2 days ago at the Barcelona Smart City World Expo. Just scan the QR code and look at 50 of those companies that are really moving forward this climate neutrality movement in our cities with practical, implementable, scalable solutions. Thank you very much for listening to me. Looking forward to the panel.
Thank you very much, Alexander. Please join with me. Can you sit here? And I would invite you also Peter, please, and because we would like to start a debate. Thank you. As you want. And I would like to propose to you some questions, but I would like also to open this debate to the audience. So please, if you want to prepare a question, si queréis preparar alguna pregunta, you can make in a few minutes. My first question would be, you have huge experience working in different countries and Asia, Europe. Which are the main differences that you have perceived when you are going to build, how communities are being built in different countries? Have you perceived some differences? Please.
Well, I think one of the most significant differences is that from Eindhoven, from the western part of Europe, we go for the money, we go for the economy, and then society will follow. So that means that we only start to question how inclusive are we in our development if we first get things running in terms of economy. And the first time we were in Vietnam and they presented us their social policies on economic development, it's always socio-economic development. So from a communist perspective, from a socialist republic perspective, they always try to find a balance between financial and social interest in the way they manage their policies and also implementing their policies. So that is a very significant difference where, especially in my town in Eindhoven, we are only very recently starting to realize that there's also a burden in terms of your economic development. We're reaching the boundaries of our growth in terms of economy, but that's not only economy, it's also the pressure on society, it's also in terms of social facilities. So I think that is for me the most meaningful difference I am facing, and which I always share in Vietnam, that I say that is what we learn here, and that is what I take back to my country if we are going through these kind of projects in Asia.
Yeah, I can add something to the, I think one of the, I totally agree with what Peter just said, but I think one of the main differences when you come and talk to people, the first thing you recognize is how aligned do people think, right? Is there a joint vision? Is there something that they want to achieve? And how big are the boundaries between people and institutions? There are cities and societies in the world where there is a very top-down approach to things, right? So the visionary leader goes forward, thinks this is the vision, and the people follow. In other places, there is a very healthy culture of bottom-up innovation. I don't think you can do anything in the Netherlands without having a proper debate at the beginning, in the middle, and the end, and afterwards. Yes, so these are the kinds of things. These cultures of exchanging ideas and what to do, because that's all. We all have similar targets everywhere. The same. We want a prosperous society. We want a higher income. We want less pollution. All these targets, they are somehow similar. They're phrased differently. They have a different focus. But the thing is, how to get there is actually the difference. What these ideas are and where they come from which parts of the society, and that's always very interesting and very curious.
I would like to mention that there are different points of views everywhere, but also there are similar things everywhere. Okay? And let me point some similar things. No? The first is human factor is everywhere. And most of the people always is worried about their family and have similar values. It seems they don't have similar values, but around the world are similar values. Everybody wants to take care of his, her family, and they want to that the society grows. So we share a lot of things. We need exactly to customize and to individualize each project, but we also have to point that we are facing similar problems. We need energy, we need water, we need to manage the waste, clean cities, security, are similar problems. So perhaps there are differences in the culture, but we can use this for enrich our vision. Because from different cultures you can have in this polyedric ecosystem, you can get a lot of additional information or value. But at the end, we are only in the same planet, and we are human, and we are facing around the same problems or facing the same challenges. But of course, there are cultures. For example, the difference I would like to mention, it's for example, it's about discipline. So that the societies in Asia, they are, when the boss say do this, they do this. And in Europe, I always recommend that if you are a project manager or if you are a leader and you say do this, you need to check that this has been done. This is in the Asian culture. People say you are crazy if you tell them that they need to check something, then a boss has ordered, they say you are crazy.
Is there any question, any comment that the audience would like to make to our guests? I think they're a little bit shy, but I would like to ask you, you have mentioned sometimes education. We are in a university. We would like to know your approach about this issue. How important are universities in this environment when we want to build intelligent communities? Of course, it's something obvious that they are playing an important role, but I'm sure that you have an opinion about which is the role that they are playing nowadays and which would be the role that they could improve in the future.
So I can maybe start, but I'm not gonna. So I'm not gonna doubt there's better answers to this. But the role is crucial, right? Because what we need is ideas and well-educated people. That's part of the resources, if you want. So lots of the transformations, the big ones that we see across the world, are also based on, a new, very well-educated workforce entering, and it also universities give a culture to a society, right? So the openness of thinking, the having new ideas, that is crucial to bringing everything we do forward, and particularly within cities, they keep the neutral viewpoint, right? So they always have the eyes towards the future because it's about understanding the past, going towards the future. But as a university, you don't have an economic interest. Companies often have kind of a mixed kind of part in getting the future forward because they still economic entities, so they need to create profit. Whereas universities often can play the role of actually checking up things, do they make sense or do they not make sense? That can be students, the projects, but that are also the professors, the teachers that keep the values of an area, and often those values are very local, very culturally embedded, alive, and that is two of the elements that I can now think of where universities are super important. So creating the workforce for the future with the right mindset and being this neutral kind of reference point for the future of a particular area.
the model I showed you in terms of development means that countries like Vietnam and Thailand are also introducing the concept of a lifelong learning. They start to realize that if you're building your basic capacities, maybe at a vocational college, the next step in education is that you're reaching out for applied sciences, and then eventually you hope to be also entitled to enter university. So that is an ongoing system of knowledge development, which also works parallel to your economic development model, because if your economy becomes more intelligent, the city becomes more intelligent, but you also have different requirements in terms of capacities. So that model is accepted and adopted. We are starting to open up tech labs and fab labs where young people at primary school get already orientation towards technology and those sciences that will be promising in terms of their future perspective. So all these models we are used to here in the West, in Spain, in Europe, are becoming very quickly adopted on a global scale. And eventually, that is also, I think, the good direction, because that will kind of a continuous improvement model which you can project on your society, also on your economy, and obviously your educational system is the main supplier of the most important resource in the world, and that is human talent is almost the only differentiator if you look around where large companies basing their investment decisions on. So no longer it's the price of the land, it's not the price of the labor, but it is the availability of a qualified educational system that is capable of delivering the right curricula at the right time for the demand of industry, but also public service, because these smart minds not only work on the private side, but they also work on the public side.
Yes, my vision is that the silos model has no sense. Has no sense at all. No? And my vision is that to face the complex problem that we are facing around the world, we need to build always multicultural and also multidisciplinary teams. So we must work all together and collaborate all together. So it's not only the triple helix locally in a municipality, it's a worldwide triple helix, what we really need. For example, in Sacred Family, there are teams from all around the world working to finish the basilic. So this is the model in the future. So cooperation between universities, between cities, because this is what enriches, no? Because at the end, creativity. This is an idea of Dr. Mario Alonso Puig, one of the writers I mentioned it in my presentation. The creativity, something new, appears when you are able to link things that apparently has no connection at all. And then appears a new solution. And to do this, you need a very open-minded vision, working people from around the world with different. So that the silos model that was working in a lot of companies, that each department don't talk with the other department in the other side, and this has no sense at all. And the same in cities and the same in societies.
If I may just, in the meantime, add one more that just came to my mind. Universities also attract talent, right? So it's not just creating the talent, but it also attracts international talent, which is another thing that just helps the economy, helps the innovation ecosystem. I assume you have also at the university lots of different nationalities coming from all over the world to study here, to grow, and that's it's just a factor that attracts the good people, the right people, also to a place in a city.
Yeah, and also it must be the first place when we can identify this talent. Yeah. And we are very close to the companies because it's quite useful to make this connection, isn't it? Any question? Yeah.
Thank you for the presentations. I think it was Mr. Arjalik was stating that all this intelligent community movement was relying in the academia, the university, the industry, and the governance. No? So I think, and I understand that after the last question, that the academia is quite involved, And this transversal interdisciplinary knowledge, I think, is in the roots of the university. And also the industry is eager to follow this because there are new opportunities of business. I like this idea of the skill obsolescence. I think they have companies obsolescence as well. But how far are we in reaching an agreement between the political options, between the parties, on this is the right way to move, this is the right direction? Because we are showing examples that I can say some of them were not fully democracies, no? How far are we in the European environment, in this political consensus, this is the right direction? Thank you.
Should I start? Okay. Peter, do you want to start? Okay, well, it's a very good question and really not an easy one. The honest answer I have to say is I don't know, but we have never been closer, right? So it all feels going in the right direction. So we have never had more consensus. Peter mentioned it in his presentation that, actually the crisis or the crises, plural, we are now in, have actually moved us faster and closer to having, unified targets and a unified approach. I think in the details there is a lots of disagreement. So we can discuss about the right color of electric cars on streets for years, but the important thing that for me, and that's really still the answer stays, I don't know, honestly. The general direction that we have, having more livable cities, climate neutrality, better economy, more equality for everyone. These are things we don't disagree no matter where we are in the political spectrum. But on the details, and as you asked, on the right way, there's a lots of disagreement. But still, my answer stays: we have never been closer to it. How far we need to go, time will tell.
I think you were touching upon a very important point. The triple helix is about business, it's about universities, and it's about public government. But more and more, an inclusive model of development will require you to integrate your social society also as part of your development model, if to make it real inclusive. And that is the most important part. Look at the local city here in Barcelona or in Holland, no difference. To create a participatory type of development, what we call co-creation, is the most complex model to implement, because you can easily invite a local citizen to join, have a kind of afternoon session, and we put them some yellow papers on the whiteboard, and we have our kind of participation. But it is only a one-time effort. What we need is a structural way to integrate society in the important decisions we make. So that is a very complex model, and that is the reason why after the triple helix, and we now hear about the quadruple helix, we hear about the pentahelix. So everybody is looking for the quest, what is the solution to the question you ask. And obviously in Vietnam, I make the joke that I say sometimes it's also convenient not to work in a fully democratic country, because in my hometown, it took us 25 years to take a decision politically about a new ring road, which is hampering our economic and also spatial development. It's hampering the development of new housing, but still we consider it as a privilege of our democratic society that progress and advancement is not taking place. And obviously we also see the opposite in Asia, that ring road is already being constructed in 1 year later after we were there for the last time. And I think the answer is in between, because you have to make sure that as a society you take careful values of your local citizen. And on the other hand, we also know that there's a kind of the cost of progress, which is a very careful balance between the various interests. And I think there sometimes a democratic system as we have in Europe, or sometimes we pretend to have in Europe, makes things very complex. As you're also facing here in Barcelona with your present government and your mayor. So there are always difficulties in politics will hamper the type of decision making you would require. But it is very inspiring to have the experience to work in Asia and other, let's say, democratic or socio-democratic countries, to actually find the differences in the way how we can handle and manage them. So, but I think you have touched on a very important one for me. Yes.
Yes, this is one of the reasons why ICF is working or focus the influence in the local governments. It's because it's the authority that is closer to the citizens. So it's closer to the real problems, and try to avoid geostrategic problems and other kind of issues. So the forum tries to of course, this is a great challenge, and it's a great challenge about leadership at the end. It's about engagement. Vamos, en català, com engresques a la gent, no? So I have translated. How you because it seems that we give all the power to one guy because we put a paper in a box every 4 or 5 years, and this is what I also mentioned in my presentation. We elect a team. Sometimes we don't elect a team, and then it's a mess and something happens, and appear a team who is managing the city or who is managing the community or the autonomous community of the region, but civil society must be more proactive and must be asking questions about how are you managing or how are you managing our city, our country. Please, KPIs, no? Results. And this is something that at least in Spain we don't do, almost never. We say, okay, and every 4 years I'm going to vote in the next election. And a lot of times there are only 50% of the people who go to vote. So this was my call. No, it's please be more active. Be more active. Write an article. Make more events like this. Do things. Don't stay at home watching TV.
Yes. My name is Marina Matashova. I'm urban planner at Dora Lab. Thank you very much for presentation, and it's very interesting, and I like that you call intelligent community. You not only come from the smart to intelligent, but from city to community, because now let's say we come from habitat to ecosystem, from city to, let's say, metropolis of connected communities. And my question is, in the next years, we wait for have most of urbanization in Asia and African countries which are not yet urbanized. So we worked, for example, in Côte d'Ivoire, in Abidjan, where people they sleep on open air, but everybody have smartphone. So my question is, what about these? What about communities? For these areas, there are not cities still in these areas, and maybe we shouldn't transfer the Occidental models to these areas. Maybe with the technology, we could avoid industrialization. Maybe we could create regenerative community with food production, with connection with nature. So should we need to transfer all of these steps of industrialized communities to these areas, to this new future, I will not say cities. Maybe there will be not cities there, but intelligent communities. So what do you think about these new models, and will accidental city model will be applicable to these areas? Thank you.
Oh, well, I think you have a perfect question, because one of the areas where ICF is also doing a lot of research is in the rural part of urbanization. And to give you one practical example, I was talking about the south of Vietnam as being the hotspot of industrialization and manufacturing. But at the same time, I was there in October. We visit these rural areas where you cannot keep away digitalization, but they are focusing on ecotourism and bio-based production of fruit and vegetables. So there's also another reality which is coming up based on what we learned in the last 2 years of COVID. So on one hand, we are connecting them via broadband internet in one way, so that education can reach everybody who is open, also should be entitled to that. And on the other hand, there's the force and also the natural way of people reaching out to nature. There's also a different perspective on urbanization. So what we see happening in the south of Vietnam is that people again are moving back to rural areas where the online allows them to work and to study, also in those more rural parts and they also started to appreciate the green environment, which is now gradually starting to stimulate ecotourism and also eco-type of farming. So that is where we see the inverse of the fast industrialization on one hand, and I think that is a development which we'll see happening all around Asia, and hopefully also especially in countries like China, because these are most in demand of this kind of, let's say, inverse development. Thank you.
Thank you. For concluding the event, I would like to ask the Emeritus Professor Manuel Domínguez, PhD, that I think that he wants to close with some words, please.
Thank you. Peter, Alexander, Agustín, thank you very much for your talent and knowledge. Extraordinary. Okay. En nuestra universidad creo que tenemos algunas slides que ver. Yo diría que, some ideas to thank and then today, ideas con agradecimiento, ¿no? En nuestra universidad estamos aquí, no sé si tenemos el mando. ¿Lo tienes? ¿Quién tiene el mando? ¿Está aquí? Vale, gracias, thank you. Tenemos 3 puntos en nuestra Universidad de Conocimiento que es importante tener en cuenta. El primero de los 3 ejes importantes, la voluntad de estudiar, de investigar, el debate que estamos teniendo hoy y la cultura de error. Nadie puede avanzar si no tenemos una cultura de error que nos haga conocer los límites del conocimiento a la vez que avanzamos. El primer punto es ese debate solo para construir conocimiento, es nuestra esencia. El segundo es la acción disruptiva del pensamiento creativo. La tercera es la duda, la metodología y la duda para crecer. Es lo que hacemos en el máster de comunicación digital y nuevas tecnologías. Dentro de esa cultura de error nos preguntamos y le preguntamos a los alumnos y nos decimos hoy aquí todos juntos si queremos ser el cambio en lugar de adaptarnos a él. Entendemos que los alumnos, y les decimos que provoquen el cambio, que sean el cambio a partir del conocimiento que tenemos en nuestra universidad. En el tema de las Smart Cities, en el tema del conocimiento, desde hace algunos años, creo que desde 2013, 2009, empezamos a ver que el mundo de las ciudades inteligentes, Eindhoven es pionero, Po en Francia, otros, surgían muchos conocimientos, pero poco operativos. O sea, había más proceso intelectual en los medios de comunicación sobre qué es una Smart City que una realidad operativa en las ciudades. Políticas, económicas, no dejaban avanzar en este sentido. Había que pensar, había que repensar, había que educar y sobre todo algo muy importante, la política. Desde la universidad trabajamos en la ciencia y la investigación, pero ¿tenemos buena política para hacerlo? ¿Existen buenas acciones, conocimiento político para que eso sea posible? No se puede avanzar si en la inteligencia artificial, en la robótica, en las Smart Cities, no se puede avanzar si no hay una buena política. Por lo tanto, hemos de pensar y hemos de repensar. Yo creo que es una de las acciones de la universidad. Para nosotros es muy importante que ustedes entiendan, que yo entienda, que nuestros invitados comprendamos ¿Qué es esto del flujo de la cuádruple hélice? Llevamos años estudiando pasamos de la tercera hélice a la cuarta. ¿Por qué? Porque eso es Smart City. Si no hay cuarta hélice, no existe Smart City, desde nuestro criterio de investigación. La primera hélice es el conocimiento, la ciencia de los centros de investigación, una universidad o cualquier otro centro. La segunda hélice son las compañías, el I más D más I y el RECH y el desarrollo. La otra columna muy importante son las políticas, TIC, de los estados y de los gobiernos. Y la cuarta hélice es la persona. Por primera vez, desde la Sociedad de la Información 2013, donde la persona aparece como un eje central hasta hoy, la cuarta hélice es la persona. Es decir, el talento de todos nosotros ya no es de arriba a abajo que nos aplasta, sino que a partir de ahora en las Smart Cities, una de las cuestiones es que el talento de la persona va de abajo arriba. A eso le llamamos Living Lab, conocimiento y acceso digital disruptivo desde la calle, desde abajo hasta arriba. Nos parece muy importante. En las líneas de investigación del máster y en las líneas de investigación de esta universidad, de este college, tenemos algunos puntos finales, ¿no? Estamos en la cuarta revolución. Reconocemos la primera, la revolución industrial, la segunda, la del motor, Alemania, Estados Unidos, la tercera, la sociedad de la información, la cuarta revolución, en la cual estamos en este momento inmersos en esta universidad y analizándola, el Big Data, el Cloud Computing, el Internet of Things, la inteligencia artificial y el papel de las Smart Cities. ¿Cuáles son estos puntos esenciales? El humanismo digital, la filosofía del humanismo digital. ¿Qué papel juegan ustedes? ¿Qué papel jugamos todos nosotros en el mundo de las Smart Cities? ¿Qué significa el humanismo digital? La persona como eje central de todo el proceso. El Knowledge Lab, la cuatro hélice, es la unión de la empresa, la unión de los gobiernos, la unión de los centros de investigación y la persona, que es el cuatro eje, la cuarto hélice. Los Living Labs, como centros sociales de acceso a la innovación disruptiva. El sexto, cómo las redes generan un panóptico que nos aísla, cómo nos defendemos de ese proceso. Séptimo, la robótica, cómo la robótica empieza en este momento a cohabitar con nosotros y como jóvenes en Estados Unidos o en Asia existe un reflejo directo con la robótica. Es decir, empiezan a humanizar la robótica. Analicemos eso, qué significa. Octavo, algo importante, sobre todo en China, la vigilancia. La era de Internet también es la era de la vigilancia, monetizar nuestros movimientos. ¿Qué ocurre eso con las Smart Cities? ¿Cómo vamos a gestionar ese proceso? Que nos parece importante. La comunicación inmersiva, todo lo que es realidad virtual, videomapping, etc. Y cuarto, que para mí, y creo que es importante en esta universidad como un punto de investigación, es el significado y el significante de todo aquello que hacemos y en las redes, ¿no? No es tan fácil vivir en la plaza pública, pero nuestros invitados han citado parte de lo que hay en esta slide, que es línea de investigación. Una parte tecnocrática, ¿es cierto o no? La calidad de vida, los valores y la visión económica, la resiliencia, la capacidad de soportar los movimientos y los cambios sociales, ser sostenibles, creativos y tener un conocimiento suficientemente avanzado. Desde el máster hay tres ejes centrales, que es la sociedad del conocimiento, los living lab como disrupción del pensamiento, las compañías y los negocios. Al fin y al cabo, hemos de saber cómo rentabilizar el ROI, el retorno operativo de las inversiones que hacemos, y las herramientas. Estos ejes forman parte de nuestra esencia. Lo que han dicho nuestros invitados es extraordinario. En esta universidad trabajamos en esa línea. Invitamos a los alumnos, invitamos a la sociedad a trabajar juntos en el pensamiento y avanzar, sobre todo, como decimos en la ciencia, con el debate, la duda, para conseguir nuevos descubrimientos. Señores, Muchísimas gracias, es un placer. Muchas gracias a todos ustedes. Esperamos vernos todos, quizás, en este mismo evento en el 2023. Gracias a todos.
Thank you very much.